Dear students, light. Light influences organisms because producers, that is green plants or phytoplankton in water, all these they perform photosynthesis only in the presence of light, and producers are the energy producing organisms in the entire ecosystem. So, light plays a very important role in the supply of energy in an ecosystem, and this light influences organisms in different ways. Mainly, we all know light influences the pigmentation of organisms. If you take cave dwelling organisms like Proteus anguinus, as long as the salamander is living in darkness inside the caves, they appear very pale in color. But when you brought out this organism, then this organism developed color. That shows clearly light influences pigmentation of organisms. So, light has influence on pigmentation. Light influences metabolism. As we increase the intensity of light, it is observed the metabolic rate of organisms also increases. And light influences the behavior of organisms. As we all know, some of the organisms are active during daytime, they are called diurnal animals. Some of the organisms are active during night time, they are called nocturnal organisms. So, the behavior which is getting influenced, in this case it is mainly the factor light influencing the behavior. And of course, vision. Vision, as we all know, light plays a very important role. Anything we can see, we can find out only in the presence of light. Then, light influences locomotion, movement of organisms. This movement of organisms is directional change or speed, change in the speed of the organisms. Change in the direction is called phototaxis. So, oriented locomotor response is called phototaxis. In this phototaxis, organisms might be moving towards the light, towards the source of light, then we call it as positive phototaxis. Example, Euglena. If you place Euglena in the laboratory, it is observed the movement towards the light. As we all know, Euglena is a photosynthetic organism. So, it moves towards the light, that we consider positive phototaxis. And there are some organisms which move away from the light, that is negative phototaxis. Example, earthworms, cockroaches, these are all nocturnal animals. So, naturally they do not prefer light, they move away from the source of light. So, it is called negative phototaxis. Then, when it influences the speed of locomotion, it is called photokinesis. Photokinesis is, as you increase the intensity of light, the speed of the organism increasing, but directional response is not present. So, non-oriented locomotor response, whichever direction it is moving, it increases the speed or speed may decrease. So, this photokinesis in the laboratory they observed in larval stages of mussel crab. Technical name of mussel crab is Pinothrus maculatus. Larval forms of this mussel crab, they were increasing their speed of locomotion by increasing the intensity of light. This is called photokinesis. And phototropism generally we observe in plants. Plants grow towards the light because they are immobile organisms. They move towards the light. Movement in the sense they grow towards the light, that is called phototropism. So, these are some of the effects of light on locomotion and even on plants also growing towards the light, that is called phototropism. They show some activities repeatedly almost at the same time every day. They are called circadian rhythms. A simple example, birds as soon as sun rises at the dawn, they come out of their nest, and by evening at the time of sunset, dusk, they go back to their nest. This is the activity we find every day almost at the same time, depending on the sunrise and sunset. So, these are circadian rhythms. So, repetition or the activities which are taking place in 24-hour cycle every day at the same time we find the activities taking place, that they are called circadian rhythms. Then if these activities are taking place in 1 year, almost every year at the same time birds would be migrating to other place. Or another example, almost breeding takes place at the same time. These are all called circannual rhythms. The occurrence of activities in 1 year at the same time, in every year at the same season or the same time breeding takes place, migration takes place. These are all circannual rhythms. So, these are considered biological rhythms or biorhythms. So, the factor which is deciding these biorhythms are set in the organisms, different organisms, basing on the light. Light is the factor which is influencing these biorhythms. Same way, we should mention about one more thing, biological clocks. These biological clocks are present in the brain. These are to some extent genetically determined, but light plays an important role in setting these biological clocks. Some people can get up early in the morning, but they cannot stay awake till late in the night. Some people can stay awake late in the night, but they can't get up in the morning. These are all, of course, behavioral changes had taken place in course of time, and which is influencing setting of biological clocks mainly means that is light. Genetical and these biological clocks are fixed in the genes also, but light also plays an important role in setting these biological clocks. So, both environment and genetically determined factors are responsible for setting these biological clocks. Then photoperiodism. Before going to explain this, first let us see what is photoperiod. The length of the day, duration between sunrise and sunset, that is called photoperiod. It varies from one season to another season. Response of organisms to the changes in photoperiod is called photoperiodism. Response of organisms to the changes in photoperiod is called photoperiodism. Example, migration of birds. In case of Siberian crane, technical name Grus leucogeranus. So, during winter, when this photoperiod, that is length of the day, becomes very short. So, for foraging activity, foraging means for its feeding activity, to capture the food and all, the light is that length of the day is not sufficient for these birds. So, they start migration towards these warmer parts of the world like Rajasthan. In Rajasthan, there is Keoladeo Ghana National Park. It was once called Bharatpur Bird Sanctuary, now upgraded to National Park in Rajasthan. So, these birds, they migrate to Rajasthan during winter. Again, during summer, they go back to their places. So, this behavior is depending on the changes in the photoperiod. UVA rays, the wavelength of UV rays is 320 to 380 nanometers. These are harmless and these are actually helping in synthesis of vitamin D in the skin. UVB rays 280 to 320 nm, UVC rays 100 to 280 nm. These are harmful. So, these are lethal, they cause skin cancers and all. So, this ultraviolet rays, to some of them are useful, but some of them cause cancers also. Now, before concluding this effect of light, we will see one more commonly studying factor, bioluminescence. You studied in the chapter animal diversity also, one particular phylum is there, Ctenophora. They exhibit this bioluminescence. Bioluminescence means light emitted by, light produced by living organisms. Generally, source of light, mainly it is sunlight, moonlight, starlight, all these also sources, different sources of light. But sometimes living organisms, they also produce light. This is called bioluminescence. This bioluminescence is produced due to the presence of a protein called luciferin, which gets oxidized in the presence of an enzyme luciferase. These two proteins are responsible for production of light in the presence of oxygen. We will take number of examples: ctenophores, coombe jellies, sea walnuts or sea gooseberries, ctenophores, Chaetopterus. This is a tube dwelling polychaete called paddle worm. this is a polychaete, annelid, and some jellyfish, cnidarians, fireflies, insects, మినుగురులు అంటారు తెలుగులో, and some fishes, pyrosoma, this is urochordate, all these, and some squids, cephalopods, and some fishes. Like this, number of examples are there. These are all some of the organisms which can emit light, getting adapted to these changes or variations in the intensity of light and in different places. Light decreases, the duration of the day decreases as we are moving from equatorial region to polar region. So, accordingly the organisms also they show adaptations to the variations in the duration and intensity of light also. Now, another important abiotic factor which influences the organisms is soil. Mainly pH of the soil, mineral composition of the soil influences the plants which are growing in that particular soil, and depending on the plants, the fauna, animals also different in different types of soils. The pH mineral composition of soil again depends on how the soil is formed. Formation of soil, climatic factors, weathering. Weathering means slow disintegration of rocks. Slowly these rocks get disintegrated and they form the upper surface of the soil. So, weathering of rocks, climate, how the soil is formed, whether it is formed from sediments or transported along with the floods and all, some of the soil may get transported to particular place. All these factors influence the nature of the soil. And you might have studied in schools and all, different types of soils are there, clayey soil, sandy soils and all. So, the soil, nature of the soil is related to this percolation of water, water holding capacity. All these again depending on the nature of soil. Nature of soil depends on this formation of soil, weathering of rocks and climate. All these are influencing the nature of soil. Nature of soil means their pH and mineral composition. They are responsible for percolation, water holding capacity. So, plants growing in this soil are different in different places, and according to the nature of vegetation, animals also differ in different types of soils. And another important thing is this, in soil factors we call them as edaphic factors. Edaphic factors means factors which are related to soil are called edaphic factors. This pH, mineral composition and water holding capacity, these are all called edaphic factors. And topography, one more term they use generally, topography, surface features of the soil. Surface features, physical features of the soil. whether it is plain or mountains are there, or like Hyderabad topography is different from and Bangalore, like that different surface features, topography also differs from one place to another place. So, this is another abiotic factor influencing the life of organisms. Okay, we are talking about different types of factors which are closely related to living organisms. But now we will see what are the responses shown by organisms. Coming to the responses of organisms to abiotic factors. When the abiotic factors are showing variations, definitely organisms also they respond in different ways. Why should they respond? Means generally these organisms they maintain their metabolic rate, they maintain the body temperature, they try to maintain the pH of body fluids constant. That is called homeostasis. Maintaining constant internal environment is called homeostasis. This is essential for their survival. So, to maintain this homeostasis, they undergo some changes. They change their behavior, they change their morphology, they show some physiological changes so that they can survive even though external environment is undergoing changes. But the responses shown by different organisms is of different types. All organisms do not show, they cannot have same type of mechanism, so they cannot show same type of response also. Some of the organisms, they are regulating their, they are regulators, they regulate the mechanisms, they regulate their activities, their internal mechanisms are regulated. So, whatever the external factors, whatever the changes in the external factors, they always try to regulate and maintain homeostasis. But this is achieved mainly by mammals, birds and very few lower vertebrates and invertebrates, very few. Particularly mammals are highly successful. That is why they are able to live in deserts and in polar regions also. They are able to regulate their body temperature. They show mechanism of regulation of body temperature, thermoregulation. We all know the sweat glands are present in the skin of mammals. So, when body temperature is less than, or when external temperature is more than the body temperature, then we start sweating. So, that is how the cooling of the body takes place. Same way, if the external temperature is very less, then we start shivering. This shivering causes contraction of smooth muscles that releases heat. That is how they regulate their body temperatures. And we also find osmoregulation. These kidneys and all, they act as osmoregulatory organs, of course sweat glands also, and brain controls all this osmoregulation. So, these are all the different mechanisms shown by mammals, and birds also show this regulating behavior, regulating activities, and very few lower vertebrates and invertebrates are regulators. Then most of the organisms, 99% of organisms are conformers. They change their body environment, internal environment according to the surroundings. They don't maintain them constant. They don't have those mechanisms like advanced animals, so they conform to the surroundings. So 99% of animals are conformers. They change according to the surroundings. Most of the animals, they change according to the external environment. These are conformers. And some of the organisms are regulators like mammals, birds and all. These are regulators. They always maintain their internal environment. They regulate like that. And some organisms like camels, they conform to some extent. After that, they regulate. These are called partial regulators or partial conformers. Example, camels. Conformers, I said 99% of animals are conformers. Regulators, birds, mammals and very few lower animals are regulators. And organisms like camels, these are partial regulators. Here, one question arises: when regulators are highly successful, why not conformers? All these conformers, why did not they undergo evolution and changed into regulators? For this, we have to think about this, and we will give an explanation like all the conformers cannot regulate. For example, small sized organisms like hummingbirds, shrews, mammals, small sized mammals, all these smaller in size, when they live in colder places, because of the smaller body mass, they can't produce heat. So when they cannot produce heat, they cannot maintain body temperature, and their body size, because of their smaller body size, they are not able to produce more heat. That's why you find in colder regions, small sized animals are very, very rare. Like that, every organism, they have some limitations, so all of them can't evolve and they could not change into regulators. Another thing is energy spending, that is, they require lot of energy for regulation of body temperature. That is also not possible. They cannot spend so much energy for their thermoregulation. So that is why all these conformers, mostly they remained as conformers, but they could not evolve as regulators. Only one season there are changes in the temperature. Suppose winter, the temperatures are going down below 0, like in Siberia, only for a period of time. After that, again the temperature and the environment becomes favorable for them. So in such cases, organisms, they show temporary mechanisms, like they migrate to other place. If the unfavorable conditions are temporary, then they show migration to other places. So they migrate to other places. It is called escape in space. Again same example, Siberian crane migrating from Siberia to Rajasthan, and some of them they show this dormancy for a period, for a short period of time they enter into a state of dormancy. Dormancy in summer is called estivation. Dormancy in winter is hibernation. So, by stopping their activity and by covering themselves by mud, like estivation, you can take an example, these frogs or Protopterus, a lungfish, it shows estivation. Hibernation also shown by number of frogs, polar bears, they show this hibernation. They enter into a state of dormancy. Again, when favorable conditions set in, they come out of their dormancy. And another mechanism is diapause. This is suspension of activities. They do not enter into totally inactive or dormant stage, but they postpone, they suspend their activities. Like metamorphosis is delayed in some insects, and zooplankton and insects, embryos of fishes, all these they delay their activities. Metamorphosis is delayed, breeding is delayed. So, temporarily they suspend their activities during unfavorable conditions, so that they conserve their energies and they can withstand that period, and again during favorable conditions they continue their life cycle. This is called diapause. Now, migration is considered escape in space, dormancy is considered escape in time. Escape in time. They are escaping for a brief period of time. These are the responses to abiotic factors. Let me summarize. As abiotic factors are undergoing changes in different places of the world, in different seasons and all, organisms also they change their responses. Like some of them undergo this they show thermoregulation and osmoregulation. Some of them are conformers, and some of them they migrate to other places. Some of them enter into a state of dormancy, and some of them exhibit this diapause. These are all some of the responses shown by organisms to abiotic factors. So, different type of adaptations we find when abiotic factors are changing. Mainly, first and the most important ecological factor is temperature. So, the adaptations shown exhibited by organisms for changes in temperature and changes in the salinity of water, changes in the pressure inside the water, all these let us discuss. These adaptations first to withstand the high temperature and low temperature, they show some behavioral adaptations. Morphological adaptations and physiological adaptations. So, these adaptations mainly to withstand temperature, they show these adaptations. Behavioral adaptations we can explain by taking the example of desert lizard. These desert lizards, night time the temperatures would be very low. So, the lizards we all know they are cold blooded vertebrates. So, body temperature also decreases. So, morning time as sunlight is present, as the sun is not where the sun temperatures are not very high, at that time these lizards they come out of their burrows and they show basking in the sun, absorb the sunlight, they absorb the sunlight. But by afternoon again the intensity of sunlight increases, so they go back to their burrows. So, this basking in the sun is a sort of behavioral adaptation we find in desert lizards, and even earthworms and all during summer they go deep into their burrows. And we can give example of birds also, they migrate to another places, that is behavioral adaptations. Morphological adaptations. Structurally also some changes take place. Suppose mammals or warm-blooded animals living in colder regions, they show larger body size. When body size is larger, the volume is more, so tissues, body mass is more, they can produce heat, metabolic heat production is more. And we can also explain relative to surface area, volume is larger. Surface area increases 2-dimensionally, volume increases 3-dimensionally. So, ratio between surface area to volume is less in warm-blooded animals living in colder regions. So, ratio between surface area to volume is less in such animals. This is explained by Bergman, so it is called Bergman's rule. Example, Alces alces, American moose, living in colder regions, having larger size. And with the same species, when it is living in warmer regions, size is less. So, this is Bergman's rule, effect of temperature on body size. This is explained by Bergman, so it is called Bergman's rule. Another thing is Allen's rule. Here also we find one difference in their morphology. In case of mammals, like this fox, there is a polar fox, Vulpes lagopus. The ears, tails, these are all smaller in size. So, extreme parts of the body are shorter. Shorter extremities we find in these organisms. Vulpes lagopus, if you see, the ears would be short. But if you see a desert fox, Vulpes zarda, the ears would be larger. As size of the ears is larger, surface area would be larger. Then heat loss would be more. So in desert areas, heat loss should be more, heat production need not be more. That's why surface area is increased in desert foxes. In polar foxes and all, they need not lose heat, but they have to produce more heat, or they have to conserve the heat. So they have shorter ears so that surface area becomes less. Leaves are modified into thorns in cactus and all, and in some cases the stomata are also present in deeper pits. So these are all some of the morphological adaptations. Then physiological adaptations. These animals can live like fish, which are able to live in polar regions, and they are also able to live, the other organisms like mammals, lizards and all, they are able to live in deserts also. So animals are able to live in extreme conditions. So all of them develop some different types of adaptations, like archaebacteria. Archaebacteria can live in hot springs where there is more than 100 degrees Celsius, more than the boiling point. The bacteria are able to live because they have some special proteins, and this DNA, RNA, proteins and all, they do not undergo denaturation, do not undergo denaturation even at high temperatures. Not only that, the cell membranes of these archaebacteria, the glycerol, cell membranes contain lipids and proteins. Glycerol of these lipids is linked to hydrocarbons, and the hydrocarbons are branched also. So this also helps in protecting the cell from such high temperature. And as I said, fish are able to live in very cold places, polar regions also. They have some anti-freezing glycoprotein. Anti-freezing glycoprotein is present in their blood. Fishes living in colder regions, they have anti-freezing glycoprotein present in the blood. And some insects, they retain glycerol in hemolymph. Insects have body cavity, open circulation, it is filled by hemolymph, body cavity filled by hemolymph. That hemolymph has glycerol. This glycerol acts as anti-freezing agent. These are some of the physiological adaptations we find in organisms. So adaptations shown by aquatic animals. In freshwater animals, they are living in hypotonic medium. Body fluids are hypertonic. That means body fluid concentration is more. Surrounding medium concentration is less. So, they face the problem of, like take amoeba, a simple example, amoeba, they face the problem of endosmosis. Water starts moving into the, starts flowing, diffusing into the body. And the body fluid, after all, what is the body fluid in amoeba? The cytoplasm. It gets diluted. So, metabolism and all gets disturbed. So, in order to counter that, they develop contractile vacuoles. These contractile vacuoles absorb excess of fluid and they burst near the surface, removing excess of water. That is in case of protozoans and some sponges also. Freshwater protozoans and sponges, they have these contractile vacuoles, so to maintain the body fluid concentration. Gills, water enters into the body. Through the gill membranes and all, water enters into the body, and along with the food and all, also water enters into the body. So, they have well developed glomerular kidneys. Well developed glomerular kidneys are present in freshwater fishes. Freshwater fishes, well developed glomerular kidneys are present. Lots of nephrons and glomeruli also well developed. So, through gill membranes, water enters into the body and they have glomerular kidneys. Actually, here the gills are present. Gills are covered by this bony plate, operculum and all, but gill membranes are permeable and water enters into the body. And as the body fluids are getting diluted and all, these glomerular kidneys produce hypotonic urine. That is, dilute urine is produced. Dilute urine is produced. So, more and more water is lost from the body with the help of these glomerular kidneys. But as they are losing water, they are losing salts also. So, they have some special type of cells present on the gills. Those cells are called chloride absorbing cells present on gills. These chloride absorbing cells absorb the salts from surrounding water. That way they are conserving, they are getting the, they are taking the salts and losing water. That is, in case of freshwater fishes, they maintain this osmoregulation. And during summer, as I already mentioned, Protopterus, a lungfish, it shows estivation, reverse. So, during summer, water levels will decrease. So, they withstand summer conditions by undergoing estivation. And in case of marine animals, marine fish, mainly marine teleost, that is bony fish, marine bony fish, they face the problem of exosmosis because body fluids are dilute, hypotonic, and surrounding seawater has more salt content, their concentration is more. So, they face the problem of exosmosis. To withstand this, marine bony fish have aglomerular kidneys. Very less number of these nephrons and glomeruli are very less, poorly developed. Aglomerular kidneys are there. And mostly this ammonia and all goes out through gills only. And they drink seawater. They drink seawater. But when they are drinking seawater, they are getting more salts. So, to remove salts, they have chloride secreting cells on the gills. They excrete salts. This is how they manage in marine waters. Cartilaginous fish like sharks and all, they solve their problem in a different way, that they show physiological uremia, retain urea in the blood, and TMO, trimethyl amino oxide and urea are retained in the blood. So, body fluid concentration becomes equal to the surrounding. So, neither exosmosis nor endosmosis takes place. Then, in case of birds like seagulls, penguins, they release salts through nostrils. That is how they overcome the problem of osmoregulation. Estuarine fish and migratory fish, they have glomerular kidneys. Glomerular kidneys, though they live in both freshwater and marine water, kidneys are glomerular. And chloride cells secrete in marine waters, absorb salts in fresh water. And other mechanisms like salmon, it drinks lots of water and it is diluting the body fluids by drinking lots of water. These are adaptations by estuarine and migratory fish. They can withstand, they can change their mechanisms in both the types of environment. In terrestrial animals like kangaroo rat living in North Indian deserts, this will not drink water for many days, but it depends on metabolic water. Water produced by oxidation of food, glucose, fats, some water molecules are produced, it depends on metabolic water only. And in birds, reptiles and all, insects, they show uricotylism. And mammals have very long Henle's loops are there. They produce hypertonic urine. These are all some of the adaptations we find in terrestrial